Greetings again. Our topic for this session, as you can see on the screen, is towards a restructured system of teacher education, which is merely a very fancy way of saying that we are trying to improve the training of teachers so that the education system in this country becomes better. Do you see how simple it is? This is called strategic competence, by the way. In other words, the ability to restate things in another way without changing the meaning, which is an extremely useful skill for any teacher to have, obviously, since it makes better explanations possible. And I must warn you that this brief session is jam-packed with confusing jargon that tested my strategic competence to the extreme. So what are we trying to accomplish here? Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to change the education system from within. To do this, you will require enhanced practical, foundational, and reflexive competences to equip you with the superpowers needed for this momentous task. Let us then examine what is required to give you these superpowers, and we'll start with a technical definition of practical competence. There, you can see it on the screen. Practical competence is when the educator demonstrates the ability to make decisions about which course of action to follow and performs the chosen action. Do you understand that? Say, for example, you want to use the story of the emperor's new clothes as a task in your classroom, which you should, by the way, since it really teaches a good lesson. Anyway, you don't have a copy of the text, so what do? Simple. You download a few copies along with the study notes by using Google, after which you select the best of the material to use in your lesson. There. You have just demonstrated the required practical competence. Great. So then let's move on to foundational competence, which is where the educator demonstrates an understanding of the knowledge and thinking which underpins the actions taken. And we'll continue with the example of the emperor's new clothes as a method of demonstrating what this entails. You are now busy drawing up a pre-reading activity in order to activate the learner's schemata and to introduce them to new words and concepts such as emperor, tailor, and fable. So you use various pictures, a closed task, and a column matching task to accomplish this effectively in the classroom. And that's your foundational competence put into practice. You know that without a pre-reading activity, your learners will not be able to understand the story completely, so you compile some lovely, active, and enjoyable tasks for them. Let's move on. Now, in order to understand the last of these competences, it is necessary to define the word reflex. On the screen there, you can see the Wikipedia definition. Oh, where would we be without Wikipedia, eh? Which basically says that it's a quick response that you carry out without thinking about it. Mosquito bothering you? Smack! Problem solved. You don't think about it, you just do it. So, reflexive competence is where the educator demonstrates the ability to integrate performance and decision making with understanding and the ability to adapt to change and unforeseen circumstances and explain the reasons behind these actions. This is a bit of a fancy way of describing what we in English call the ability to think on your feet. So once again, we'll use the emperor's new clothes. One of the children puts up his hand and says, "Sir, that's a king, not an emperor." How do you react? I'm using this as an example because it really did happen to me during a lesson. Well, in my case, this led to an active class discussion about monarchy, democracy, empires, and colonialism, with dictionaries and atlases being used in groups and pairs as the kids competed to see who could find the definitions and places first. And while that was not according to the lesson plan, I think anyone will agree that effective education took place that day. Now, you could have responded completely differently and with equally successful results. Each of us has our own individual style of teaching, and every classroom is a unique environment. But the whole point here is that you must have the basic teaching principles so ingrained into you that you are able to turn unexpected glitches into educational opportunities. And, by the way, if you make a total mess of things, as I have frequently done, well, that's great. You learned something useful in the process. Just please don't set fire to the school by mistake, but we won't go there right now. Okay, let's change the topic slightly and talk about disciplinary learning. Now, the discipline to which we are referring here has nothing to do with school discipline. No, this is academic discipline, which is simply a branch of knowledge. You hear that? Yes, knowledge, because that just happens to be the foundation on which understanding is built. And in your case, the knowledge in question is, of course, how to teach. Next, we have pedagogical learning, which means essentially learning how to teach. Well, teach effectively, that is. By the way, do you notice that in the definition on the screen, it's defined as both an art and a science? Think about that. Science deals with absolutes, with facts, while art has to do with creativity and appealing to the senses and, wait for it, pleasure. I say no more. Next, practical learning, which is one of the most exciting aspects of our profession, seeing that we live in the information age. Have you taken the time required to stay up to date with the latest technology used in the classroom? I must admit that it's been a struggle for me, since I was born in an age when making a telephone call involved physically rotating a dial by sticking your finger into the appropriate hole and moving the dial around. Now, the more advanced schools have classrooms based on tablets, and communication is no longer the primary function of our phones. But anyway, for me, that's what practical learning is all about, keeping abreast of the latest technological developments. Fundamental learning is obviously all about learning the basics of teaching, which may sound easy, but it's not. From child psychology through classroom control techniques all the way to taxonomical assessment, the sheer volume of the information ensures that you will be a lifelong learner in order to absorb merely the bulk of it. And finally, we have situational learning, which involves you adapting to the environment in which you teach, and which is one of the main factors involved in making you a unique teacher. We shall end here. So does it sound as if this course is simply the beginning of years of learning for you? Well, it most certainly is, but don't worry. You're going to have lots of fun along the way and hopefully become an even better teacher than you can imagine. Goodbye for now.